Pakistan are renowned for some real infighting and flaring up.
They are, yeah.
I'm a Pathan. Watch out.
Pakistan versus New Zealand series is starting fairly shortly. Lucky and I did a review or preview of the series in Urdu, but I've got none other than Danny Morrison with me joining today. BaatShaat. Danny, welcome back to BaatShaat.
Mate, good to see you, Simon, and nice to be home. I've got to say, last time I think I spoke to you, I was in the Caribbean.
I remember that. Yeah, back at the CPL. Yeah,
I'm wearing the Caribbean, the polos. She's on.
Oh,
She's a
God.
gardening shirt.
You've been through the IPL. You've been through so much, but the CPL has got stuck into you, I guess. The weather probably kept you there.
And being back in sort of, tropical Queensland where I live, I'm very blessed to live in southeast Queensland, just north of Brisbane, by choice with family. Very, very blessed, Salman.
So India's touring Australia right now. We're sitting here being very jealous of the fact that the crowd's showing up. How's the situation in Queensland, Danny?
Yeah, they've been very strict, and it's fascinating living here because coming from New Zealand and having one government that just deals with it all. Here, my younger brother Scotty Morrison, the Prime Minister, who's based down in Canberra. Federal government have to deal with state government, and it's a bit like mini America, I suppose. And each state can be so vigilant about different things and staunch about other things. And so, long story short, Anastasia Palaszczuk is the Premier of Queensland, and they've been quite staunch, as has the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, just about lockdowns. And I think the difference is in this part of the world, we're a bit spoilt here. By virtue of geography and size of the populations. New Zealand's 5 million, Australia's 25 million.
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at downtown Mumbai, that's the population of, Mumbai and Australia. Crazy.
Absolutely.
And then you think about Pakistan, where you get nearly, let's call it 200 million people in Pakistan.
Easily.
So,
Karachi.
the COVID thing's a real issue. So we're spoilt down here, Salman. But, they've been a bit more staunch and strict about it, very regulated. In this part of the Western world, really quite staunch about things.
And, you're in the Southern Hemisphere. Like, I'm living in the Northern, if you look at it, if I was to call that, if anything.
Yes.
And Canada has got 36 million, but it's spreading like crazy here. I don't know why. We've got pretty much everything.
Well, you've got winter, haven't you?
We've done. Yeah,
You're
exactly.
cold now. So the cold apparently is obviously going to be more challenging with this virus. And a flu
that's
virus.
What it picked up here.
Yeah.
So I think Australia and New Zealand, they did quite well during the winter season.
Yes.
Right?
Well, they was very strict about it. And then, of course, Victoria, where, God rest his soul, Dean Jones, Merv Hughes, Damien Fleming, they're all from Victoria. But there was an outbreak there. And it just showed you during the winter how it could morph and go boom. And suddenly you have like a second wave.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. And
well, I think, in some ways, second wave was brought down by a Pakistani team when they reached the New Zealand shores. They hit those lands. But I think what basically happened is what I've learned through the sources is they must have picked those viruses up during their flights, which were commercial, which weren't charter planes. So obviously there's no control over who you go to talk to or sit with. So how was that taken from the New Zealand perspective, from the visiting Pakistanis?
Yeah, look, I think it's very difficult, and I know Pakistanis, there was a lot of furore on there, and how dare you, and
exactly.
Pakistan get very passionate about it, and it's no slight on the people of Pakistan. Really, what it is I think because of the less population and the very strict rules in Australasia, Australia and New Zealand, they really want to keep a real lid on it. We don't have, as we've just clearly mentioned, the obvious hassles with the weather. It's getting colder in the Northern Hemisphere, and the sheer amount of people to try and control this. It's such a different economy, and we all know. And I, I've been blessed to, the last 30 years, be in and out of the subcontinent, and I really do sympathise with your day-to-day street vendor that is living hand to mouth with his food business. People that live on the street, that have their work on the street, that people, use their business, and it's just a day-to-day, whether it's the food industry, mechanical industry, taxi drivers, rickshaw drivers, all of that moving and toing and froing. We're spoilt down here. There's just the less numbers, of course. And so in terms of the travel thing, I think for Pakistan, it doesn't matter whether Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lankans, it didn't matter who was coming. The West Indians, they got into trouble as well because you couldn't leave your room, and yet they were socialising down the hallway and swapping food, amongst each other. Well, no, you can't do that. And so there's these very strict protocols that make things difficult. And I just think it doesn't matter who you are. If you're used to socialising within your own bubble and family orientation, which is very key. I mean, I see it with a lot of the Sri Lankan Indian camera guys I work with. They take their own little cookers on tour, and they'll sit around on the deck and they'll cook their own food, even though they're working, say, in Bangladesh or working in Pakistan, the Sri Lankans I'm talking about, guys, and they'll cook their own food because they want to eat what they want to eat and they like, and they take their little cookers. So there's all of those different things where you're into sharing. And so I think it's quite a different culture in that regard. So that was always going to be a little bit of a challenge for any of the subcontinent sides and the West Indies, who, again, Phil Simmons and them said, look, we've stuffed up, I'm sorry. So then, of course, Salman, that impacts on your training and your training methods given a very short window. And so that's the trouble for Pakistan or anyone touring within this whole now COVID scenario, is you've got less time to go out and train when you want to, just to go outside and hit a few catches on the front lawn of your hotel. Well, no, you can't, I'm sorry, because, you've got 7-day lockdown and then another 7 days within your bubble. So it can be very mentally tough and frustrating.
So, Danny, speaking of Pakistan, they just got out of that COVID situation somehow, managed to, get through it. Everybody tested negative from there on. They've just lost Babar Azam, going into a pretty important series for Pakistan. How do you see that loss affecting Pakistan? He's out for 10 days for sure with a thumb fracture. I don't know if he's going to make it for the first test. But how do you see that affecting Pakistan, since he's been the rock of Pakistan cricket for the last many
you hit the nail on the head, Simon. Absolutely. He is the rock. And you have a player like that. You look at Steve Smith, and they're going about Virat Kohli and Kane Williamson, Joe Root, okay, maybe not so much at the moment. Rudy's a bit out of sorts. But when you look at someone like that, those big gun players, whether they're captain or not, it's your star quality player that usually bats at 3 or 4 in that real linchpin position and can take the game away from you, particularly T20 or 50 overs, because about it, as we know, batsmen can bat for a long time and dominate in white ball cricket. And the blossoming of Babar Azam, I've been really grateful and fortunate to see him develop through the last sort of 3 or 4 years and into Test cricket as well. So I think it's massive. It really is. When you've got a star quality player like that and you lose him out of your side, and given that his leadership quality, a captain, he's been around the scene now and he's just star batter, I think that'll have a massive impact on Pakistan.
Because I think, all Pakistanis, as much as we won against Zimbabwe, it wasn't a real test of character for anyone. It was a very lopsided series. We were very much looking forward to seeing the Pakistanis play the Kiwis. But, when I look at the lineup in the first T20 that New Zealand's picked, I think I've shared the picture with you as well. They've got Mitchell Santner leading the side. Are they taking it too easy, or is it just, it is what it is?
Well, they've also, they've lost a star quality. Lockie Ferguson got a 5-fer recently, and then he's got more injury, and he's prone to a bit of injury, sadly. And these guys that run and hurl it at over 150 Ks can get that. They've dropped Ross Taylor, and everyone goes, he's such a good quality. Yeah, but look, young guys coming through, and I just think there is some real quality. Conway, these sort of guys coming through. Timmy Seifert, I saw in the Caribbean, he came late to it. Glenn Phillips has done well in some franchise T20 around the globe. So you're sort of looking to the future a little bit. And that's not a slight on Roscoe. I think Roscoe, he's more of a 50 over and Test cricketer now. But I think, New Zealand are spoilt for choice a little bit. And I saw Santner, obviously, at the IPL in the UAE. And, they had their issues as well with the COVID and, the isolation thing. And then they had some guys that, tested positive. So when you look at where Santner was at and then developing into the game, I saw him walking around the boundary actually during the Wellington Test match that's just finished today here, having training and getting into the nets there with a bit of batting stuff with Luke Ronke, the Black Caps batting coach. So, they've got a lot of guys to choose from, Salman, and very exciting. So some really good, and some young talent coming through.
Well, when I look at the lineup, Danny, I look Mark Chapman, Devin Conway, Jacob Duffy, some new names for people from my part of the world, right? They're not so established. So we look at this lineup and say, I don't know if New Zealand's put their best foot forward for the first T20, even though they got Jimmy Neesham. Colin de Granum's not part of the squad as well. They've lost him. When you look at the second and third, the squad for the second and third T20, you see Kane Williamson coming back. You see Trent Bolt. A bit more meat to that lineup. So it would, Pakistan, would they be looking to go on the attack from the word go and try to take that upper hand in the first T20? So when Kane Williamson comes back and Trent Bolt returns, we've got something to fight for?
And the great thing about it there, you just recently had the playoffs with the PSL to finish off PSL 5. I think too that left-handedness that you have with your bowling attack, superb. And I just saw actually at the end of the Test match on TV here on an app I've got to watch the cricket live is Brennan McCullum. He said it'll be fascinating actually. Yes, no Babar Azam with the injury you mentioned, Salman, but I think he was mentioning too. I think that pace attack of Pakistan's is revered, and the experience those guys with, it's 50 overs from the World Cup last year. And guys developing and coming through. The Freedy, the young guy with his left arm pace. Shaheen, very exciting. Wahab, and you've got experience. Muhammad Amir. You look at those guys, and then a couple of right armers as well. I think you've got to look at New Zealand conditions, and I think it'll be quite, pace friendly. You're going to go with that. I think you need to in New Zealand at this time of the year. It's only the start of the summer. The pitches wouldn't suit the spinners more until February, March. So, Salma, when I look at that, very reputable pace attack for Pakistan in T20. You just think, you'd love Bubba there, of course, but he's not. So it could be a very competitive series should Pakistan in that first one start well.
So takes me to my last couple of questions. One, Shaheen's going to be there, the left-arm pacer, pretty young, upcoming. You saw his performance in the last over year. You followed him. We got Haris Rauf coming up. He's going back to the Big Bash League right after in January once the tour is done. But Amir's missing out, right? They haven't picked Amir. Does that come to you as a surprise?
Yes, it does. And I mentioned him because, there was that talk around there.
Exactly.
Isn't there? It's a funny one. I don't know if there's a bit of politics involved with that. And he became a father recently, didn't he?
He did, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, and I remember, I do recall he took some time out there, and understandably so. So I don't know whether there's, I don't know. It's a hard one to know if there's some attitude thing going on. You darlings, I have to say, and not sounding too facetious, Pakistan are renowned for some real infighting and flaring up.
They are,
I'm a Pathan, watch out. This sort of thing, which you admire. But at the same time, geez, when the boys turn up and they're all a bit more in sync and together, then look out. Pakistan beats anyone on any given day. But I do wonder about that. I just think, the process, what's going on in Muhammad Amir's head, how does it relate with the selectors, the coach selectors, all of that stuff. Because he's, in a way, too good a bowler with so much experience to be missing out, whatever it is. So, that's frustrating. You mentioned Haris Rauf, and again, he had a great Big Bash last year, deceptively quick, and all of a sudden can chop up from 142 Ks to 150 and can be very dangerous. So, very exciting as ever, Pakistan.
So, it's funny, you mentioned the infighting part. What happened a couple of months back is Misbah came on the screen and said, we're going to focus on players that are making themselves available for all formats for Pakistan, right? Then this morning, Waqar comes on live from the PCB platform and says, Mohammad Amir has been dropped, or Mohammad Amir left red ball cricket because of other reasons. It wasn't due to his workload. And Amir's going at him since then on Twitter, right? It's happening mostly in Urdu, so it might be missing your radar. Exactly. But why is that coming up? Have you seen or sensed anything when you're around these guys that there's something like that happening? Amir's being singled out at this point. He's got class. He's a very classy bowler, even now. Would that be causing a bit of an issue in his mindset when he's out playing?
Well, sadly, you go back 10 years to that whole incident at Lord's with the no ball scenario. And Waka was coach, wasn't he? He was coaching that side at the time. So
absolutely.
You can understand there'll be history there. And Waka was privy to being around in the nucleus. He was in the inner sanctum of all of that going on, and then post it as well. So, look, it's frustrating. So, and Waka, who I spent a lot of time with, he has those two different hats. He's sort of either in the coaching setup or he's in the commentary box, and can move and be quite transitional and see what's going on. So, I think possibly, and I'm only surmising here, that players, and particularly Amir, who's trying to create some sort of redemption and move on from that, very difficult. And so whether there is some undercurrent between them because of that history, I don't know. It doesn't look, from my position, I can't. And as you rightly say, there's the language barrier, and who knows what sort of they might just brush past each other. But it seems a shame, Salman, because, you want as much of the talent as you can get, because you're relying on some quality guys come and go, retire, a couple of injuries. And for Mohamed Amir not to be in that sort of setup, for whatever those reasons are, very, very frustrating.
It doesn't make sense to world cricket when they look at it from outwards, right? Why is Amir not missing? And I think one of the things, Danny, following Pakistan cricket for the last 10 years, I see Waqar was the guy when it happened, right? He saw it up and close. But then Misbah was brought in to clean the mess when that happened as a captain. So I think they've taken it upon themselves to basically eradicate anything leading back to it. It seems.
It seemed. I can understand sports cricket fans in Pakistan even watching this or following what's going on, and perhaps deduce that and say, well, that stems back to then a decade ago, and as you rightly say, Misbah came in, a great character, very ethical, strong in his vocation of what he wanted to do for the side, and keep playing for a long time as he did, to help younger guys come through. And you had a bit of a Waqar Misbah connection. Look, it's. I think you're always going to have that, and people have often asked me in terms of because of things that have gone on for a long time, and you think of Sharjah and the hotbed of there with match fixing and gambling. And I've said this before in public domains. It's very difficult to completely stamp out. It's a bit like the flu vaccine, never completely going to be 100%, never going to completely clean it, are you?
Never.
I just think as far as bookmaking is seen as illegal, it's not legalized in the subcontinent like it is in the West. Even in the West, you think about that, guys up to no good in the West, in lots of different codes of sport, up to no good, sorting stuff out, cash on the side, all of that stuff. Sadly, I think some you get into this very philosophically, very esoterically, and go, is that part of the human makeup? Is that part of our, to be cheeky and naughty and trying to get one over someone else or get ahead, and is that way we can do it? And take this shortcut. As we know, illegally, that stuff in the universe comes back to haunt you. So you're better to be clean and simple and just love the game. And so I think for a lot of us that don't really get exposed to that, having said that, been well documented, Lou Vincent's on a massive road to redemption, the Chris Cairns trial, all of that. So none of us are immune to that in different pockets, some of the Aussies, the English guys, whatever. There's a lot of it that's gone on because of the money in the game. And I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I think for a lot of it, I don't think we're all saying down in this part of the world, how naughty you are, and that we can throw stones in our glass house, because you can't. No one's been immune to this. It's just, sure, different levels of it. But I think it's always going to be a challenge, I think, for subcontinent sides. Sheer mass numbers, what it means to society, the game of cricket particularly. It's massive. And I think then you throw in the global expatriatism of India, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis and Sri Lankans that live abroad where you do in North America, the United States, the UK, Europe, that follow the game and can then either go online and place bets or whatever, It's just huge. And so it's very difficult in the mindset of some that come from very low socioeconomic backgrounds. And, there's a challenge. That's just reality.
Exactly. And when I look at it, where my mind goes as a fan, as a follower of cricket, is I love the way these societies may have gone through these, but the way they've reintegrated these players back into the system, the way they've provided them the support, right? I mean, we saw to some extent Dave Warner as well as Steve Smith going through something like that, but they've been incorporated into the system pretty well. They found their mojo, right? Amir's never been able to do that. He's just fought his lone battle. I see that happening pretty much with Sharjeel Khan right now. He's fighting his lone battle. So why is that so? Is that important to help a player come back through the system and help him reintegrate?
Yeah, it's a funny one. And then you can say, well, Simon, on what levels are you talking in terms of the Warner-Smith thing, the ball tampering? Of course,
true. Yeah.
Cheating within the game. We all know that. We've all scratched the ball at various times, whether it's Test cricket or one-day cricket.
Or bitten the ball. Yeah.
Got hungry, thought it was an apple. Needed another tea break. But
exactly.
I think that the other difference, I suppose, when you go to another level is that if there's a lot of money involved, my take on the Aussie scenario was that they lost sight of about the game as a whole, and they wanted to win at all costs. And I think that sort of culture in their heads, under pressure, Warner and Smith, captain, vice captain, and then throwing the young guy Cameron under the bus.
Bancroft, yeah.
Cameron Bancroft. I mean, where's he now? I mean, so how mentally is he coping?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then you look at Muhammad Amir's scenario, and Mr. Baruhu, the captain. So when you look at that, where they've gone and how they are, at that sort of level where that sort of scenario of money and fixing the game comes in, takes it to another playing field, another level. So I think that's very difficult in terms of engagement back into the group. And I think, you're talking differently. I mean, Hansi Cronje, his case well documented.
Yeah.
How that really just blew him and him out of the water and the whole scenario.
I think heartbreaking chapter.
Yeah, and I just think mentally to come back from something like that, makes it impossible, really. And those well documented examples of guys.
Yeah. And our good old friend Salim Malik is still fighting to prove his innocence, which we all know where that will go.
And Azharuddin, Az is the same.
Azharuddin, yeah. Manoj Walker, gone. Yeah, dusted. Yeah, exactly. There's so many names that come to my mind right now, right? And Shrishant is trying to make a comeback on the Indian side as well now. So there's so many. So Danny, thank you again for giving me the time at the last such a short notice. I appreciate that. But to round it up, before I go, I'm going to ask you one last question. Who do you see taking this T20 series, Pakistan or New Zealand?
Well, I think when you look at home sides, if it was Pakistan at home or Pakistan or the UAE, you'd fancy Pakistan. I think in those conditions, and given all things equal, say Babar was fit in the UAE or playing in Pakistan, you'd back the home side. And the same in New Zealand. I think the conditions that so well, and I'm not making excuses for Pakistan, but I also think very difficult in this COVID time. This landscape is just new. It's so unprecedented. So and Misbah, I know people at home say, "Oh, look, you're making excuses already," but he's got a valid point in terms of having less time to get organised, less practice matches to get organised because of COVID-19 makes it that much more challenging, Salman. So you'd have to say New Zealand are favourites. They've also just been playing some competitive cricket against the West Indies, so they've actually had some cricket under their belt, test matches and that T20 series and stuff. So, you'd have to favour New Zealand to take, playing at home as well.
And I think that's probably would be the only difference. Pakistan will be trying to get back into the mold, while New Zealand's had a fair run at the West Indies in the last few weeks.
Oh, totally.
Awesome.
It makes a huge difference.
Huge difference. That does well for their morale as well, right?
Yeah. They've just won 2 test matches by an innings.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few of those guys that play in the T20. I think, Saudi captain the T20.
Saudi captain,
gives Kane a rest. You've got Bolt, who's been playing for the Mumbai Indians and loving it. Kane, he can either play in it or if he chooses not to. You've got quite a bit of depth in that setup there with New Zealand. So, they'll be raring to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Danny. Much appreciated. Thanks for joining BaatShaat again. We'll stay in touch and have yourself a wonderful day.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Pakistan win? Is that why you said that?
Yeah, why not? We love an underdog. We love an
there you
underdog.
go.
Oh, totally. Always.
Yeah, we'll take that title any given day because it just makes it easier, right? Awesome. Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers, Salman.
Goodbye.